In a town where brokenness felt permanent, Jessica, a mother struggling with divorce and a crumbling home, sets out to rebuild not just a house, but her life. With her children by her side and the support of unexpected allies, Jessica discovers that true strength comes from the willingness to start over, and from the love we share with others. As her house transforms, so does her family, forging a new future together. Will Jessica find the peace she's been searching for? Where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe to continue following this incredible journey. 6 months after signing the divorce papers, Jessica Carter stood motionless beneath a relentless autumn rain, staring at the house she'd pinned all her hopes on. A 1920s Victorian that had once symbolized elegance, but now sagged warily, as though bearing the weight of her own heartbreak. The real estate listing had promised classic charm, but reality was less romantic. Peeling paint, shutters hanging askew, and a porch that leaned like a tired old man. It was all she could afford after the divorce drained her savings, yet somehow she convinced herself it was the fresh start she and her kids needed. Her optimism dimmed further when 14-year-old Maya stepped from their battered SUV, her artistic eyes narrowing in disgust. "Seriously, Mom," she said, tugging at her tangled headphones, gaze fixed accusingly on the crumbling facade. "You dragged us halfway across the state for this?" Jessica forced a smile. It has character and potential. Maya didn't reply, just stalked toward the front door, her expression dark beneath a curtain of hair. Behind her, Ethan, 10 and eternally hopeful, paused briefly. "It just needs a little love. Right, Mom?" "Exactly," Jessica replied with forced cheer. But stepping inside, even her optimism faltered. A damp, musty odor, like forgotten memories, filled the air. The photographs online had cleverly hidden the true extent of neglect. Water stains spread like rust-colored blossoms across cracked plaster walls, while moldy carpeting surrendered reluctantly beneath her feet. Ethan's smile faded as he stared around, visibly disappointed. Suddenly, Maya's scream shattered Jessica's thoughts. Turning, she saw Maya's leg had punched through a rotten stair step, splinters scraping her jeans, panic distorting her features. Jessica rushed forward, her heart racing, pulling me free. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Maya snapped, voice shaking more with anger than pain, tears brimming in her eyes. "This house is falling apart. You ruined our lives for this?" Jessica felt the sting of her daughter's resentment deeper than any splinter. She watched Maya retreat to a bedroom, slamming the door shut behind her, earbuds firmly blocking the world. Ethan, visibly shaken, looked up at her. "Did we make a mistake coming here?" Jessica knelt, hugging him close. "No, honey. It looks rough now, but it'll be home. I promise." That night, as rain seeped through cracks she hadn't yet discovered, Jessica lay awake on the hard floor, the rhythmic drip into scattered pots and pans, mocking her attempts at optimism. Maya refused to speak, headphones clamped tight, back defiantly turned. Ethan dozed uneasily beside her, clutching his favorite stuffed bear as if trying to hold on to something familiar in their uncertain new world. Unable to sleep, Jessica crept outside, seeking cell reception on the sagging porch. Her best friend's voice was comforting yet painfully distant. "Jess, how bad is it?" "Catastrophic," Jessica admitted, her voice cracking with despair. "Leaks everywhere, stairs falling apart. Ethan's scared, Maya's furious, and I'm—" There was a pause before Lisa spoke gently. "You always tell your kids that when things get tough, you start small, fixing what's right in front of you." Jessica wiped tears mixed with rain from her face. Did say that, didn't I? At dawn, Jessica took Lisa's advice to heart, gripping an old broom she'd found in a closet and attacking the debris. Strewn kitchen. By the time Mia and Ethan stumbled downstairs, blinking at the clean patch amid ruin, Jessica had made pancakes on their portable stove. "See?" she said brightly. "Already looking better." Ethan reached eagerly for a pancake, but Maya stood hesitantly, her defensive posture softening slightly. "What if we can't fix it?" "Mom?" Jessica paused, recognizing the deeper question beneath her daughter's fear. "We'll find a way, Maya. This house has history. Our history. My grandmother spent summers here. My grandmother spent summers here. There's strength hidden inside these walls. We just have to uncover it." Later that morning, Jessica's fragile optimism was tested again by an inspection from Luke Hernandez, the town's young contractor with thoughtful eyes and capable hands. After surveying every damaged room, he met her gaze directly, his honesty tempered by quiet reassurance. "The good news is the foundation is solid. This house was built with care. But the bad news is everything else," Jessica finished for him, half laughing to conceal the anxiety tightening her chest. Luke offered an encouraging smile. "I've seen worse. It'll take time and patience, but we'll get there." Jessica felt something stir inside her at his calm certainty, a spark of possibility she'd believed long extinguished. Maybe she'd underestimated her own strength. Underestimated what she and her children could rebuild together. As Luke departed, Jessica noticed Maya peeling away strips of faded wallpaper, uncovering delicate pencil sketches on the plaster beneath. "Mom, come see," Mia called, her voice suddenly energized. Stepping closer, Jessica stared in wonder at sketches of their house, as it had once appeared, graceful and strong. They were signed simply, lovingly. Dorothy Harper, 1949. Jessica gently touched the drawings, feeling tears of hope fill her eyes. This wasn't merely a house. It was a vessel of stories waiting patiently to be retold. And suddenly she knew, deep within her bones, that despite everything, they'd come exactly where they belong. Jessica's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the pen, poised above the stack of papers that would dissolve 15 years of marriage into a collection of legal signatures. The office felt cold, sterile, a stark contrast to the warmth she'd once believed her marriage contained. Her lawyer, eyes soft with concern, gently reminded her, "Once you sign, Jessica, the house officially goes to Richard. Are you absolutely sure you don't want to contest?" She hesitated, feeling the weight of every decision she'd made pressing heavily upon her chest. Fighting for the suburban home they'd shared, comfortable, modern, but stained with betrayal, meant draining the kids' college funds into a bitter legal battle. No, the future she wanted for Maya and Ethan needed stability, not a battleground of accusations and lawyers' fees. "No," she finally whispered, firm but weary. "Let him keep it. We'll find something else." That something else arrived in the form of a phone call just days after finalizing her divorce. A voice she vaguely remembered from childhood. Mrs. Baker, the local real estate agent back in her hometown, described a property that had recently come on the market. "Jessica, it's Dorothy Harper's old place," Mrs. Baker explained warmly. "You used to spend summers there, remember? It needs some TLC, but the price is very reasonable." Jessica recalled the house vividly, a grand, aging Victorian perched on a gentle slope near the edge of town. It had belonged to Dorothy Harper, her grandmother's closest friend, a haven filled with laughter, freshly baked pies, and secrets whispered beneath ancient oak trees. Despite the vague warnings about its condition, nostalgia whispered louder than reason, guiding Jessica's heart back toward home. Days later, standing in front of the house with Maya and Ethan, she felt the first flickers of doubt. The real estate listing had sugar-coated reality. The grand facade was weathered, paint peeling, porch sagging beneath the burden of neglect. Yet as she stared upward, Memories danced in the twilight, softening its edges. This had once been a house filled with joy. Surely it could be again. The first night tested her resolve, though. Rain streamed relentlessly through multiple leaks in the roof, creating an erratic symphony of dripping water into the pots and pans Jessica had hastily placed on the floor. Huddled in sleeping bags, the family picked at cold pizza by lantern light, and Jessica forced optimism into her voice. Think of this like an indoor camping trip, guys. Remember when we went camping near Tahoe? Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, but Dad was there then. His innocent words sliced deep, a reminder of loss and uncertainty. Jessica glanced at Maya, who turned away, headphones drowning out their forced conversation. After the kids drifted uneasily to sleep, Jessica stepped onto the porch, shivering beneath the storm. Her cell signal was weak, but she desperately needed to connect. Dialing her best friend, Lisa, she whispered shakily. I think I've made a huge mistake. Lisa's voice was reassuring despite the distance.
How bad is it, Jess?
Jessica fought tears. Worse than I imagined. Structural damage, flooding, mold. I'm terrified I've dragged the kids into a disaster. Silence hung between them. Then, Lisa gently offered advice. You always tell your kids to tackle the problem directly in front of them, right? Start small, clean something. Anything. In the early dawn, Jessica took that advice, sweeping dust from the battered kitchen floor. By the time Maya and Ethan joined her, Jessica had prepared breakfast on a makeshift stove. Ethan eagerly ate his pancakes, optimism returning. Mia poked at her silently until finally looking up, voice hesitant but genuine. Mom, what if it's too broken to fix? Jessica set her spatula down, studying her daughter's wary expression. This house has strong foundations. Sometimes the most beautiful things start out broken. We'll find the pieces, Mia. I promise. Shortly afterward, Luke Hernandez arrived. The town contractor carefully examined the house without masking his reactions. Jessica appreciated his frankness as he delivered his assessment. Your foundation's sturdy. That's the good news. Unfortunately, everything else requires serious attention. His quiet confidence, balanced by honesty, eased her panic. But it was Mia who unexpectedly found the first sign of genuine hope, calling Jessica to her bedroom later that day. Carefully peeling layers of wallpaper, Maya had uncovered a series of hidden pencil sketches etched directly onto the plaster. Jessica gazed at the drawings in wonder. They were strikingly detailed, capturing the house in its prime, alive and radiant. Mom, Maya murmured softly, excitement quietly emerging from beneath her usual withdrawn demeanor. Dorothy Harper made these drawings herself. Look at this. Jessica traced her fingers along the signature, feeling a surprising rush of warmth. Dorothy Harper, 1949. Something about seeing those hidden sketches rekindled a strength within her. She believed her family's life had broken irreparably. Yet here, concealed beneath the surface, was proof of lasting beauty. Maybe, Jessica realized, home wasn't about flawless walls or pristine lawns. Perhaps home meant embracing imperfections, peeling back layers to find strength beneath scars. As she stood beside Mia, their eyes meeting briefly with shared understanding, Jessica felt the tentative promise of healing for their house, their family, and her own weary heart. Morning broke quietly through dusty windows, its pale autumn light illuminating the scattered debris left by years of neglect. Jessica stood in the center of the half-demolished kitchen, taking in the chaos of her ambitious renovation project. The work had begun weeks ago, peeling back layers of decay to expose beams of promise beneath. Her muscles ached pleasantly from swinging a sledgehammer, each wall torn down feeling like a small victory against past failures. But today felt different. Reality had begun seeping through cracks in her determination. The roof repairs were over budget. Electrical wiring revealed dangerous surprises. Plumbing disasters kept appearing like unwelcome guests. And worst of all, the freelance graphic design work Jessica relied on to fund their fresh start had abruptly slowed to a trickle. Anxiety tightened her throat. Anxiety tightened her throat as she stared at her laptop screen, calculating dwindling finances against mounting expenses. She jumped slightly when Luke Hernandez's steady voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Jessica, you might want to see this." She quickly closed the laptop and followed him outside, where the north side of the roof gleamed with new shingles. Luke stood back, hands on his hips, a thoughtful satisfaction warming his face. "This section's secure, and we'll finish the rest before winter."
"How are you holding up?"
Jessica hesitated, hating the vulnerability she felt in admitting the truth. "Money's tighter than I expected. My design projects have dried up, and everything's costing more than I budgeted." Luke nodded knowingly, calm and reassuring. "It's always toughest midway through. Have you spoken to local businesses? Your talents could help a lot of folks around here." Jessica brightened slightly at his confidence. "I haven't yet. Back in the city, clients found me easily. Here, it feels different." He smiled encouragingly. "Talk to Frank down at the hardware store. His website looks prehistoric. And my sister, Elena, opened a cafe downtown. She needs branding help. Small towns run on connections. Build relationships first. Business follows naturally." Before she could reply, thick droplets splattered onto their shoulders, signaling the unexpected arrival of another storm. Within moments, rain pounded the exposed roof, pooling dangerously around their feet. Ethan hurried into the kitchen, eyes wide, clutching a flashlight. "Mom." The power just went out. Jessica rushed inside, heart sinking further. "Luke, could you check the breaker?" He nodded, disappearing into the basement. Jessica glanced around frantically. Ethan shrugged, worry clouding his face. "I haven't seen her since lunch." Panic rose sharply in Jessica's chest. Upstairs, Maya's room was empty. Jessica called her daughter's name repeatedly, voice trembling. The house answered with eerie silence, interrupted only by rain-pelting battered walls. Minutes later, Luke returned, expression grim. "Power's out all over town. Worse, your basement's flooding." Jessica barely heard him, her anxiety peaking. "Mia's missing." Before Luke could respond, the front door burst open. Maya stood there, soaked, mud-streaked, her eyes wide and defiant. Jessica rushed forward, relief clashing violently with anger. "Mia, where have you been?" At the library, Maya snapped defensively, shivering. "My phone died. I lost track of time." Jessica fought to remain calm. "You scared us to death. You can't disappear without telling anyone." Maya exploded suddenly, pent-up bitterness pouring forth. "Like you told us before, uprooting our lives, before dragging us into this broken down nightmare." Jessica flinched, the accusations hitting deep wounds. Ethan stood frozen, unsure how to react. Luke interjected gently. "Your mom's doing her best." "You're not part of this family," Mia shouted, tears sealing unchecked. "Just stop pretending you care." She fled upstairs, her bedroom door slamming with heartbreaking finality. The sound echoed harshly, leaving Jessica stunned and silent. Shame and sorrow filled the empty space between them. Ethan shifted nervously.
"Is Mia gonna be okay, Mom?"
Jessica knelt, hugging him tightly. We'll get through this. I promise. Luke's voice remained calm and supportive. I'll tackle the flooding downstairs. Take care of your kids. We'll handle this together. Hours later, Jessica sat alone at the kitchen table, the lantern's pale glow casting shadows of doubt. Mia's harsh words replayed painfully, echoing fears Jessica had struggled to suppress. Had she selfishly traded stability for an impossible dream? Were the cracks too deep, too broken to ever mend? Instinctively, she pulled out her phone, opened Instagram, and began typing, raw emotion guiding her words. Today, our renovation hit rock bottom. Flooding, power loss, family crisis. Maybe broken things can't always be fixed. Maybe broken things can't always be fixed. Maybe starting over was a mistake. Her finger hovered uncertainly over post. With a trembling breath, Jessica shared her truth, letting vulnerability stand unmasked before strangers. At dawn, weak sunlight filtered through storm-streaked windows, highlighting damage and despair. But as Jessica gazed around, something new glowed softly amid chaos. Messages from neighbors, encouraging, supportive, offering help. One note stood out clearly from Dorothy Harper herself. Jessica, every renovation feels impossible before it gets better. Hold tight. The strongest foundations rise from deepest trials. Jessica felt warmth spread gently through her heart. Maybe broken was temporary. Maybe beneath disaster lay hope, waiting patiently for her to believe again. When Jessica stepped onto the porch the next morning, the sight waiting for her nearly stole her breath away. Standing in her driveway was Luke Hernandez, and beside him, a small crowd of unfamiliar faces. A collection of neighbors she'd never officially met but who now smiled warmly, clutching toolboxes, cleaning supplies, and covered dishes. Luke offered a reassuring nod, as though sensing her confusion. Word got around town about the storm damage. Folks wanted to help. Jessica felt her throat tighten with gratitude and disbelief. Before she could respond, an older woman with kind, motherly eyes stepped forward, extending a hand. I'm Linda, Frank's wife from the hardware store. We brought fans and dehumidifiers to dry things out once the power returns. A tall man in paint, splattered overalls waved from the back. Jim Peterson, town plumber. Heard about your basement issues. Figured I'd come lend a hand. Jessica could only manage a stunned whisper. You don't even know me. Linda patted Jessica's arm gently. Not yet, dear. But that's how things work around here. Small towns survive by lifting each other up. Before Jessica could blink, the group dispersed throughout the house. Fans hummed to life, and buckets appeared to tackle lingering puddles. A neighbor she recognized as the local librarian carefully helped Maya salvage boxes of art supplies, drawing hesitant smiles from Jessica's previously withdrawn daughter. Ethan, energized by the activity, eagerly shadowed Luke, clipboard in hand, making earnest notes about structural repairs. Jessica stood back, feeling a heavy burden lift slightly from her shoulders. As the morning sunlight streamed through recently cleared windows, she began documenting the transformation on their small but growing Instagram page. Each photograph captured more than just house repairs. It showed a blossoming sense of community and hope she hadn't imagined possible. Around noon, while Jessica took a break to offer sandwiches to their impromptu helpers, Dorothy Harper's small sedan pulled into the driveway. Slowly emerging, her perfectly styled white hair catching sunlight, Dorothy gazed affectionately at the busy scene unfolding before her. Jessica rushed forward to greet her, but Dorothy only smiled knowingly, eyes sparkling. You see, I told you. This house has a way of bringing people together. Jessica felt tears threatening again, touched deeply by the older woman's quiet reassurance. Did you do this, Dorothy? Only a phone call or two, Dorothy admitted, squeezing Jessica's hand. The rest was entirely this community's doing. They've just been waiting for someone like you to help. Inside, Maya quietly approached, holding a worn leather-bound book she'd discovered tucked carefully in the hall closet. Dorothy, I think this belongs to you. Dorothy took the book tenderly, eyes misting. It's the house diary. Arthur and I documented every memory, repairs, plantings, family gatherings. I'd nearly forgotten it. Maya shifted shyly, a softness returning to her expression. I read some entries. You wrote about planting roses with my great-great-grandmother. It made me realize this house isn't just walls. Dorothy nodded thoughtfully. Homes are like people, Mia. Scars and all, they carry history. It's up to us to decide how we honor it. Maya looked at her mother, a new maturity in her eyes. I think we should keep writing in it, like you did. Jessica reached for her daughter's hand, overwhelmed by the quiet shift occurring between them. By evening, the house felt transformed. The worst flood damage had been addressed, windows sealed temporarily and the clutter organized. As neighbors gradually departed, promising to return again, Jessica stood alone with Luke beneath the freshly repaired section of the porch roof. You organized all this, didn't you? She asked softly. He smiled modestly, shaking his head. Dorothy made the calls, but people wouldn't have come unless they saw something special here. You've inspired them, Jessica. A comfortable silence settled briefly between them. Ethan and Maya, now back inside, laughed over dinner brought by neighbors, a warm sound Jessica hadn't heard often enough lately. Luke cleared his throat gently, breaking the quiet. The town festival is coming soon. Harvest fair, crafts, music. It's a good opportunity to meet more folks, maybe attract clients for your design work. Jessica hesitated, hopeful but uncertain. Do you think they'd really trust an outsider with their businesses? Luke's eyes held a quiet certainty. You're not an outsider anymore, Jessica. You're part of the place now. And actually, my contracting business could use a branding refresh. Maybe we could help each other? She felt warmth rise gently to her cheeks, touched by his thoughtful suggestion. I'd love that. As twilight softened the edges of their newly repaired home, Jessica opened Instagram again, posting an image of neighbors working side by side, captioning it, "Today taught me something powerful. Rock bottom is just the foundation on which community builds something beautiful." When she looked up, Luke was watching her, a gentle smile illuminating his expression. Together, they listened as laughter and hope echoed through the rooms behind them, filling the spaces where doubt had lingered before. For the first time since arriving, Jessica realized they hadn't merely been renovating a house. They had begun rebuilding their lives, brick by brick, heart by heart by heart. Jessica climbed cautiously into the cramped attic, flashlight cutting through shadows that clung stubbornly to every corner. Below, Ethan's excited chatter drifted faintly upward, mixing with the rhythmic hum of fans drying the damp walls. She'd read about old storage trunks in Dorothy's house diary, and curiosity had pulled her toward this forgotten space, despite her exhaustion. The attic smelled faintly of cedar and dust, memories stored away beneath layers of neglect. In the far corner, exactly as Dorothy had described, sat 3 sturdy trunks, their brass hinges dull with age. Kneeling carefully, Jessica lifted the lid of the first trunk, revealing delicate garments wrapped in yellowed tissue paper, vintage dresses too fragile to salvage, though beautiful even in decay. The second trunk held ornaments, holiday lights, and stacks of faded photo albums that she gently placed aside, planning to share their secrets with Maya and Ethan later. It was the third trunk, however, that captured her breath completely. Tucked neatly inside were bundles of handwritten letters tied together with ribbons now faded to dusty pastels. Resting atop them was an envelope, unmistakably addressed in her grandmother's handwriting. To Dorothy, my dearest friend. Jessica's heart quickened, her fingers trembling slightly as she gently opened the fragile envelope. My dearest Dorothy, the letter began, its elegant cursive familiar and comforting. As I near the end of my journey, I find myself thinking of the countless afternoons we spent at your kitchen table, sharing dreams and fears alike. Your home always felt like a sanctuary, a safe haven through life's storms. Perhaps, someday, one of my girls will find her way back to your door when she too needs shelter from the storm. Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she realized her grandmother's words were prophetic, reaching out across time to embrace her at this exact moment. She gathered the precious letters carefully, cradling them like treasures as she descended the creaky attic stairs. Downstairs, Maya sat curled on the living room sofa, earbuds in, scrolling mindlessly through her phone. Yet Jessica noticed that today, the sullen shadows had softened on her daughter's face. "What's that?" Maya asked softly, removing an earbud as Jessica set the letters down gently. "A gift from the past," Jessica replied, voice thick with emotion. "These are letters your great-grandmother wrote to Dorothy. They were best friends." Mia's interest flickered genuinely. "Can I see?" Jessica handed Maya one of the letters, watching carefully as her daughter unfolded the brittle paper. Maya read aloud, her voice softening with each word. "Dorothy, perhaps our true homes are not built from wood or brick, but from the hearts of those we cherish. Your friendship has been my strongest foundation through every storm." She looked up, eyes shimmering with unexpected emotion. Jessica nodded, fighting tears. "It is. Friendship and family. They're the foundations that really matter." Dorothy understood that. Later that evening, inspired by the warmth of those discovered words, Jessica impulsively opened her laptop and created a new Instagram account, under Torienhauser Revel. Her first post featured a photo of the house, bathed in sunset, its imperfections softened by gentle amber light. Beneath the image, she wrote honestly, "Day 1. This old house may be broken and scarred, but we're learning that restoration is more than paint and plaster. It's about reclaiming hope and reconnecting with the past. Welcome to our journey." She hesitated only briefly before hitting post, her heart fluttering slightly at the vulnerability she'd just shared with strangers. Yet, within minutes, responses began trickling in, supportive and encouraging. Neighbors, strangers, even Dorothy Harper herself sending warm words of affirmation. Jessica felt herself breathing a little easier, no longer alone in her daunting task. That night, as Jessica tucked Ethan into his makeshift bed, he looked thoughtfully at her. "Mom, are houses kind of like people?" She smiled gently. "In what way?" "They both get hurt sometimes," Ethan answered seriously. "But if you work really hard, they can get better again." Jessica hugged him tightly, eyes misting. "Exactly, sweetheart." As Ethan drifted off, Jessica returned to the living room, surprised to find Maya absorbed in the letters, curled comfortably in an armchair beneath the glow of the lantern. Maya glanced up shyly, offering a tentative smile. Mom, Dorothy, and great-grandma had something special. Jessica nodded, recognizing a new openness in Maya's voice. "They did. Maybe we can build something special here, too." Quietly, Jessica gathered Maya close, feeling the wall between them finally beginning to crumble. Together, mother and daughter flipped gently through the pages of forgotten friendship, stories of resilience and love wrapping around them like a comforting quilt. Outside, beneath the starlit autumn sky, their house stood quietly waiting, scarred but patient, ready to shelter new memories crafted from old hurts. For the first time since arriving, Jessica felt certain that she hadn't merely found a house. She'd finally discovered a true place of healing and belonging. Golden sunlight filtered through the trees lining Main Street, transforming the sleepy town into a vibrant celebration of autumn's final glory. The annual Harvest Festival was in full swing, turning sidewalks into lively marketplaces crowded with brightly colored booths, where the scent of caramel apples and spiced cider floated enticingly through crisp air. Jessica stood behind a makeshift stand she shared with Luke's contracting company, heart beating nervously beneath her warm sweater. Today marked the first real test of her fledgling graphic design business, now officially named Foundation Design Studio, showcased prominently beside Luke's familiar, trusted brand. Luke returned from a coffee run, handing her a steaming cup and smiling warmly as he admired her carefully arranged portfolio samples. "Jessica, it looks fantastic. You're going to have more clients than you know what to do with by day's end." "Let's hope," she laughed anxiously, sipping the coffee gratefully. A rush of pride stirred within her as townspeople paused to examine her displays. Logos, business cards, branding materials, all crafted late at night after long hours spent painting walls and sanding floors. Luke had insisted she create branding for his business first, gently but firmly rejecting her offer to pay for recent repairs. Instead, they'd agreed to trade labor for design services, a deal that had eased both financial and emotional burdens significantly. Ethan suddenly appeared at her side, face painted like a tiger, eyes bright with excitement. "Mom, they have a boat, building contest. Luke says I should enter. Can I?" "Absolutely," Jessica smiled warmly, handing him some money. "Where's Mia?" Ethan pointed toward a group of teenagers gathered near the small stage. Maya stood among them, laughing easily. A rare sight since their arrival. "She made a friend," Ethan reported cheerfully. "Olivia. She likes art, too." Jessica felt an unexpected warmth at seeing Maya smiling so freely, the tension that usually gripped her daughter's shoulders momentarily gone. "That's wonderful, Ethan. Good luck with your boat." As Ethan bounded away, Luke leaned in, voice low and teasing. "Looks like your first client's heading this way." Jessica turned, startled, to see a woman about her age approaching, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Jessica Carter, right? I've been following your house renovation on Instagram. I'm Emma Davis. I own the bookstore down Main Street. I've been needing a fresh look for our website and signage for ages, but kept putting it off. Your work looks exactly like what I've been waiting for." Warm relief flooded Jessica's chest. They exchanged contact information, Jessica promising to follow up soon. By lunchtime, she'd spoken with half a dozen potential clients, including the local bakery, a bed and breakfast eager to attract tourists, and several other small businesses excited to refresh their branding. With each conversation, Jessica's confidence deepened, solidifying her sense of belonging and purpose in the community she'd once feared she'd never truly join. As afternoon deepened into a mellow golden hour, music drifted softly from the stage, where performers had entertained the crowd throughout the day. Suddenly, Jessica heard Mia's voice amplified clearly across the square. Heart racing, she turned toward the stage, surprised to see Maya holding the microphone, a large easel standing beside her. "Hi," Maya began hesitantly, then stronger. "I'm Maya Carter. My mom and brother and I have been renovating Dorothy Harper's old Victorian house, and during the renovation, I found hidden drawings she created decades ago. Those sketches inspired me to start creating art again, something I'd stopped after my parents divorced." Maya unveiled a charcoal drawing depicting their Victorian home, not as it appeared now, partially restored and worn, but as it could be, bathed in soft, welcoming light. Jessica felt tears rise swiftly as Maya's voice continued, gently earnest. I named this piece Uncovered, because when we tear something down, we sometimes find something even better hidden underneath. Maybe families work the same way, not broken beyond repair, just waiting for someone brave enough to rebuild. The crowd applauded warmly, several townspeople visibly moved. Jessica struggled to hold back tears of pride and gratitude, understanding the courage it had taken Maya to stand publicly and share such vulnerability. As Maya stepped away, smiling shyly, Olivia and a small group of new friends gathered around her, congratulating her artwork enthusiastically. Dorothy Harper appeared quietly at Jessica's side, gently placing a comforting hand on her arm. You see now, Jessica, that's the real magic of this old house. It teaches us the strength in starting over, and the beauty in trusting again. Jessica nodded slowly, overwhelmed by the wisdom Dorothy had shared. Her eyes caught Luke's across the bustling crowd, his expression filled with quiet pride, understanding, and something deeper that made her heart flutter softly in her chest. Together, they'd done more than renovate a house. They'd begun rebuilding a family, reclaiming joy, and embracing a community that had already begun to feel remarkably like home. Jessica stood at the dining room window, sipping her coffee, heart racing as neighbors unloaded folding chairs and platters from their cars onto the freshly cleared driveway. Thanksgiving had arrived faster than she'd imagined. Weeks of frantic renovation had transformed the dining room into a place worthy of hosting. A polished oak table refinished lovingly by Luke's patient guidance, walls painted a soothing sage green, and delicate vintage china gathered piece by piece from local thrift stores. Yet despite the outward calm, Jessica felt a storm brewing within. Hosting the town's Thanksgiving dinner had seemed like an inspired idea weeks ago. Now, anxiety knotted her stomach. A soft knock broke her contemplation. Turning, Jessica found Maya standing quietly, a tentative expression on her face, apron in hand. Mom, Grandma always let me help bake pies before dinner. Could we? Jessica's breath caught gently. It had been so long since Maya willingly reached out for connection. Of course, she answered softly, pulling on an apron herself. Side by side, mother and daughter worked quietly, the familiar rhythm of rolling dough and slicing apples slowly eroding the tension that lingered between them. Jessica glanced at Maya, who concentrated intently, her expression lighter than Jessica had seen in months. As pies cooled on counters and tantalizing aromas filled the house, guests began arriving, bringing laughter and warmth into rooms that had once felt so empty. Dorothy Harper appeared first, elegant as always, carrying an heirloom platter. My grandmother's recipes, she explained, handing Jessica a weathered cookbook. They belong with this house, with you. Luke arrived next, his sister Elena and her family trailing cheerfully behind him, carrying dishes and bottles of wine. Soon neighbors filled the dining room, everyone settling into easy conversation, their voices mingling into a comforting chorus of community. Ethan, eyes wide with excitement, proudly showed off the handmade wooden centerpiece he'd created with Luke's help. A miniature replica of their Victorian home, adorned with candles. Jessica's chest swelled with quiet pride. Midway through dinner preparations, Jessica stepped onto the porch for air, taking deep breaths of crisp November breeze. She felt Luke's gentle presence before he spoke. You've created something special here, Jessica. Not just the house, though it's beautiful, but the warmth, the people, the connections. Jessica felt her cheeks flush, grateful for the evening twilight hiding her blush. You've been a big part of that, she admitted softly. None of this would have been possible without your help. Luke hesitated slightly, then spoke warmly. Actually, I was wondering if you and the kids would like to join me at the Winter Lights Festival next weekend. There's a parade, hot chocolate, music. It's kind of a town tradition. Jessica glanced up, heart suddenly quickening. Like a date? Luke smiled, eyes gentle. Maybe, more like a family date, if you're comfortable with that. Warmth bloomed within her, chasing away doubts. We'd love that, she said quietly, meaning every word. A sudden commotion inside drew their attention back indoors. In the dining room, Mia stood beside Dorothy Harper, her voice trembling but determined as she held up a framed charcoal drawing she'd secretly completed. A detailed family tree, intertwined artistically with the house itself. Jessica felt tears rise immediately, hearing Maya's heartfelt explanation to their gathered friends. I thought family was broken after the divorce. But working on this house taught me that family isn't just people you're born with. It's people who choose to build something beautiful together. The room fell into moved silence before breaking into applause, eyes shimmering warmly toward Maya, whose cheeks flushed beneath praise she had long deserved. Dorothy caught Jessica's eye and nodded knowingly, whispering softly. Healing happens quietly sometimes, until suddenly it becomes beautifully clear. As dinner progressed, conversation flowed freely, gratitude shared generously around the table. When dessert arrived, Dorothy motioned Jessica into the living room. I have something for you, she said gently, placing a small velvet pouch in Jessica's palm. Carefully opening it, Jessica gasped softly. A brass key nestled inside, polished to a soft glow. The original key to this house, Dorothy explained warmly. Arthur had it made into a necklace for our anniversary decades ago. It belongs with you now. Jessica's fingers tightened around the key, feeling the weight of generations, of trust, of friendship. Dorothy, I can't. You already have, Dorothy interrupted softly. This house needed a family that understood what it meant to be broken and repaired, that could cherish its scars. You've given this place new life, Jessica. And it has given you back yours. As Jessica stood speechless, tears softly tracing her cheeks, Ethan's laughter floated from the dining room, mingling joyously with Maya's rare, carefree giggle. Luke appeared quietly beside Jessica, gently squeezing her hand, his presence a steady anchor she hadn't realized she'd needed so deeply. Standing there, Jessica finally understood. This Thanksgiving wasn't merely about gratitude or community. It was about discovering that starting over meant finding new strength hidden within heartbreak, rebuilding trust from fragments of pain, and creating beauty from the ruins of yesterday's disappointments. In that warm, glowing moment, Jessica knew with quiet certainty that this old house hadn't simply sheltered them. It had truly brought them home. Early the next morning, sunlight poured through the newly installed kitchen window, painting patterns of amber and emerald across the hardwood floor. Jessica stood in the doorway, marveling at the transformation. Light filled a space once shadowed by neglect, illuminating the polished countertops and freshly painted cabinets. Thanksgiving had brought warmth back into their lives, but today held another quiet revelation. A gentle knock startled her from her thoughts. Opening the back door, Jessica found Luke standing on the porch, smiling softly, a large, oddly shaped object wrapped carefully in canvas resting against his side. "What's this?" Jessica asked. Curiosity piqued as Luke carefully maneuvered the package into the kitchen. He hesitated, a faint blush appearing beneath his steady gaze. Consider it a housewarming gift, or maybe a belated Thanksgiving surprise. Either way, I wanted you to have it. Jessica's pulse quickened as Luke pulled away the cloth, revealing an exquisite stained glass window, crafted in hues perfectly matched to their home's vintage character. Soft greens, deep ambers, and shades of twilight blue. The intricate design captured the spirit of the old Victorian, blending timeless elegance with something profoundly personal. "Oh, Luke," Jessica breathed, tracing the glasswork with gentle fingers. "It's incredible." "Where on earth did you find something this perfect?" He smiled modestly, clearly touched by her reaction. "Actually, I made it. After that big storm, seeing how determined you were, how you never gave up despite everything, well, it inspired me. It felt like this house deserved something special, something uniquely yours." Jessica felt warmth spread gently through her chest, an emotion richer and deeper than mere gratitude. Before she could think clearly, she stepped forward and embraced him, feeling Luke's arms wrap around her, strong yet gentle, holding her closer than she expected. Her heart fluttered in a way she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, an exhilarating yet terrifying rush. "You're incredible," Jessica whispered softly against his shoulder. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," Luke murmured, voice warm and sincere. They pulled apart slightly, their eyes lingering just a moment longer than necessary before footsteps sounded in the hallway. "Is that a stained glass window?" Ethan asked excitedly, bounding into the kitchen with Mia trailing curiously behind him. Jessica smiled warmly, regaining composure. "Luke made it for us, for the house." Ethan stepped closer, eyes wide with admiration. "Wow. Could you teach me to make something like that?" Luke laughed, tousling Ethan's hair gently. "It takes practice, but absolutely. Maybe we can start small. After Christmas?" "Look," Maya said quietly, pointing to the artwork thoughtfully. "The colors match the mural I started painting upstairs, the family tree with the house." Jessica glanced quickly at Luke, her heart softening even more. "You both have great taste," she replied warmly. "This window ties it all together." That afternoon, with Luke's help, they carefully installed the stained glass panel in the transom above the front door. As the late-day sunlight poured through, it transformed the entryway into a glowing tapestry of colored patterns, breathing new life into the old house. Stepping back to admire their work, Jessica felt tears sting her eyes. "It's beautiful," she said softly, almost reverently. "It feels like the final puzzle piece. The one thing that was missing." "It belongs here," Luke agreed quietly, his voice gentle. "This house has been waiting a long time for someone like you, Jessica. Someone brave enough to see its potential, scars and all." Jessica turned to face him, recognizing the depth of his words and the emotion behind them. "Maybe we've both been waiting," she confessed softly, courage rising within her chest, "for something we weren't sure still existed." Before Luke could respond, laughter filled the hallway as Ethan and Maya approached, excitement bubbling over from their successful installation. Mia smiled shyly at Luke, genuine warmth replacing her earlier reservations. "Thanks, Luke. It's perfect." Luke nodded sincerely. "Thank you, Mia. That means a lot." Ethan grabbed Jessica's hand excitedly. "Mom, can we show Dorothy? She'll love it." Jessica smiled, squeezing Ethan's fingers warmly. As dusk settled gently over the house, Jessica lingered quietly on the front porch with Luke, breathing in the crisp evening air, savoring a newfound peace she hadn't felt in years. "This home feels complete now, doesn't it?" she mused thoughtfully. Luke turned toward her slowly, voice soft yet firm. "Homes are never fully complete. There's always another repair, another project. But that's part of their beauty. It's the same with people. We're never done growing, never done growing, never done healing. But we're worth the work. Jessica's heart beat faster as she met Luke's gentle gaze, understanding exactly what he meant. Maybe that's the real gift, she replied softly. Realizing the broken pieces can fit together into something stronger, something beautiful. Luke gently took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally, as if they'd always belonged that way. Exactly, he whispered. And sometimes, if we're lucky, the right person comes along to help us see it. Standing quietly beside him, Jessica felt something shift deeply within herself. A quiet acknowledgement of possibility, trust, and hope that she'd long feared lost. Just like the stained glass window now glowing softly above their front door, their lives had become colored not by perfect clarity, but by beautifully broken pieces, brought lovingly together. Each fragment precious, each flaw contributing uniquely to the radiant whole. The town's annual Harvest Festival had transformed Main Street into a vibrant autumn wonderland, alive with music, laughter, and the comforting scent of cinnamon donuts drifting through crisp air. Jessica stood at her booth, arranging the elegant branding materials she'd meticulously created for Luke's contracting business. Beside her, Luke adjusted the display, his easy smile calming the butterflies fluttering in her chest. Months earlier, she'd never imagined herself thriving here. Yet today, surrounded by new friends and neighbors, Jessica felt an unmistakable sense of belonging. Nearby, Ethan excitedly rushed toward the children's craft tent, clutching a handful of dollars. "Mom, they're having a model boat building contest. Can I enter?" Jessica nodded warmly. "Absolutely. Good luck." She watched as Ethan ran off, heart swelling with pride at how quickly he'd blossomed in this new life. Yet, as she glanced around the bustling crowd, her happiness dimmed slightly. Where was Maya? Her daughter had been quiet this morning, lingering anxiously at the edges of the festival, still uncertain about fully embracing their new community. "Jessica," Luke's gentle voice broke through her thoughts. "I think your next client is headed this way." Turning, Jessica saw a friendly-looking woman approaching their booth, eyes bright with curiosity. "You're Jessica Carter, right?" she asked warmly. "I'm Lauren Hayes. I own the new cafe down the street. I've been following your renovation online, and your design work is stunning. Would you be available to help me refresh my branding?" Jessica's spirits lifted instantly. "I'd love to. Let me show you a few ideas." As they discussed branding concepts, Jessica noticed Maya standing near the small festival stage with a group of teens, including Olivia. Her new friend, Maya, appeared animated, engaged, completely unlike the withdrawn girl who had arrived months earlier. Jessica felt her heart swell, grateful yet cautious, hoping this newfound joy wouldn't vanish as quickly as it appeared. Suddenly, Maya stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, causing Jessica's pulse to quicken anxiously. Maya had mentioned nothing about performing, and Jessica's protective instincts flared. But when Maya began speaking, her voice steady, clear, and beautifully strong, Jessica listened with quiet awe. "My name is Mia Carter," her daughter began bravely. "Most of you know my family bought Dorothy Harper's old Victorian home. At first, I hated everything about this town, about our broken house, about starting over. But hidden beneath layers of peeling wallpaper, I found Dorothy's original sketches, and something shifted inside me." She paused, breathing deeply, her voice gaining quiet strength. "Renovation is hard. You tear things down, hoping there's beauty underneath. Maybe that's true for people, too. Maybe tearing apart the surface shows us who we really are. Maybe our broken parts are the places where the light shines through." With trembling hands, Maya unveiled an easel beside her, revealing a stunning charcoal drawing. Their Victorian house, not as the damaged ruin it had once been, but as it stood now, revived, glowing warmly, filled with unmistakable love and life. Murmurs of admiration rippled through the crowd, applause rising warmly, genuinely appreciative. Jessica's eyes blurred with tears as she watched her daughter, pride and relief flooding her heart. In that courageous moment, Maya had reclaimed her voice, her passion, had rebuilt herself just as surely as they'd rebuilt their home. Afterward, as townspeople congratulated Maya warmly, Dorothy Harper appeared beside Jessica, gently squeezing her arm. "Your daughter found herself again," Dorothy said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "You did too." Jessica nodded, swallowing back emotion. Dorothy's eyes twinkled knowingly. Sometimes, life's greatest storms clear the path for the brightest rainbows. As evening settled in, casting a soft amber glow over the festival, Luke approached quietly, Ethan skipping alongside him, proudly carrying a ribbon marked second place. Jessica smiled at them warmly, heart overflowing. "Looks like someone had good day," she teased gently. "The best," Ethan declared excitedly. "Can we stay for the fireworks?" "Absolutely," Jessica laughed. Luke leaned closer, voice warm, sincere. "Jessica, seeing you and your kids today, happy, confident, I just want you to know how special that is. You brought this house and your family back to life. It's remarkable." Jessica felt her cheeks flush softly. "We didn't do it alone, Luke. You were a big part of that." He smiled quietly. "Maybe we helped each other. Speaking of, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. The Winter Lights Festival is next weekend, and I'd love it if you and the kids joined me. It could be a family outing, or maybe even a date." Jessica's heart fluttered gently. Before she could reply, Maya appeared beside them, expression surprisingly light, her smile genuine. "Say yes, Mom. It sounds nice." Jessica laughed softly, heart full. "We'd love to." Together, as they stood watching fireworks bloom brilliantly above their newfound home, Jessica finally understood. She'd believed her life broken beyond repair, but the truth was simpler, more profound. Sometimes, life's greatest beauty emerged precisely from the cracks and wounds, patiently mended by love, community, and courage, one imperfectly perfect piece at a time. Jessica stood at the kitchen counter, her hands trembling slightly as she carefully arranged the freshly baked pies on the cooling rack. Thanksgiving had arrived faster than she anticipated, and with it, the weight of both excitement and nerves. The dining room was filled with laughter and chatter, as neighbors and new friends trickled into the house, offering dishes they had prepared, their warm smiles replacing the silence that had once hung over these walls. The table, now beautifully set with mismatched vintage china and polished silverware, looked more like a home than the dilapidated structure it had once been. As she worked, Jessica caught sight of Luke, who was talking to a group of guests near the fireplace, his deep laughter echoing through the room. He had become more than just a contractor in the months since they had started this journey together. He had become a pillar of support, someone she could rely on, someone who had quietly shown her what it meant to build not just a house, but a life. As her gaze lingered on him, she realized how much her life had changed. The house, once a symbol of loss and uncertainty, had transformed into a sanctuary, a place filled with warmth, community, and the promise of new beginnings. "Mom, the pies are ready," Ethan called from the dining room, his excitement palpable as he rushed into the kitchen, nearly tripping over his own feet. His energy was infectious, and Jessica couldn't help but smile as he grabbed the dishes, setting them carefully on the table. Maya entered shortly after, her expression softened by the warmth of the gathering. She had spent most of the morning quietly helping with preparations, but now, standing beside her mother, there was a new lightness to her demeanor. The distance that had once defined their relationship had narrowed, and for the first time in months, Jessica felt the unspoken bond between them, begin to heal. As the guests took their seats at the table, Jessica felt a sudden wave of gratitude wash over her. These were people who had become a part of her new family. People who had shown up when she needed them most. They hadn't just helped with the house. They had helped rebuild her spirit. The tears she had been holding back for weeks finally spilled over, and she wiped them away hastily, embarrassed by the sudden rush of emotion. "Are you all right?" Luke's voice startled her as he appeared at her side, his gaze soft but steady. He had been watching her from across the room, sensing the quiet turmoil that simmered beneath her calm exterior. His hand found hers, and for a brief moment the noise of the room faded into the background. "I'm just so overwhelmed," Jessica admitted, her voice thick with emotion. All of this, I didn't know if I could get here." "You've done more than just get here," Luke replied gently. "You've built something beautiful. And not just with the house. Look around you, Jessica. You've built a community. You've built a community. You've built a family." Jessica took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. It had been so easy to lose herself in the weight of the renovation, to focus solely on the physical work. But now, standing in the warmth of this gathering, she saw it all differently. The house had been the catalyst, yes, but it was the people who had made it a home.
I didn't realize how much I needed this,
she whispered, her voice barely audible. Luke squeezed her hand, offering a quiet smile. "You're not alone anymore. You never have been." At that moment, Maya's voice cut through the soft murmur of the room. "Mom, can we do something?" She hesitated, glancing around at the gathered guests. "I mean, for the house?" Jessica raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her daughter's unexpected suggestion. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Maya smiled shyly. "I think we should all share something. Something that's meaningful about this house. About what it's given us." The idea resonated deeply within Jessica. This house, which had once felt like nothing more than a burden, had given them so much more than shelter. It had given them the opportunity to heal, to rebuild, and to find strength in each other. Slowly, one by one, their guests began to share stories of the house, of the memories they had made together, of the moments that had bound them to this place. When it was Jessica's turn, she felt the weight of the room shift, every pair of eyes on her. For the first time, she realized how far they had come. "This house," she began softly, her voice steady despite the tears that threatened to fall again, "has taught me that the past doesn't define us. It's the choices we make, the people we choose to love, and the work we're willing to put into rebuilding that really matters. This house. It's become more than just walls. It's become our home." There was a moment of quiet as everyone absorbed her words. Then, slowly, applause filled the room, gentle, heartfelt, and full of the warmth that only family could offer. As the night wore on, with laughter and stories flowing easily, Jessica realized that this was what it meant to truly be home. Not just the physical space they had renovated, but the bonds they had created, the family they had forged from the broken pieces of their past. And as the last guests left, their voices still echoing in the quiet house, Jessica felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The journey was far from over. There would always be more work to do, both on the house and on herself. But for the first time, she was certain that they had everything they needed to move forward. Each other, love, and the unwavering belief that they could build something beautiful, no matter what, had come before. The soft glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the front yard. Jessica stood on the freshly painted porch, the breeze carrying the scent of freshly turned earth and blooming flowers. The house, her house, looked different now, its chipped paint replaced with a soft, welcoming hue, its sagging porch reinforced and sturdy. What had once been a place of uncertainty and dread had become a home, a place filled with love, laughter, and memories in the making. It had been nearly a year since she and her children moved in, nearly a year since they begun this arduous journey of restoration, not just of the house, but of themselves. Jessica could still remember that first night, the damp, cold air, the sound of rain leaking through cracks, and the weight of all the decisions she had to make. Every choice had felt like a gamble. Every step a challenge. But now, standing in the sunlight, she realized how much they had accomplished, how much they had fought to rebuild. Maya and Ethan were in the yard, busy with their respective projects. Mia sketching beneath the shade of the old oak tree, and Ethan assembling a new set of shelves for his growing collection of model boats. It was a sight Jessica had longed to see for so long. Their joy, their confidence returning, and the ease in their interactions. Maya, who had once withdrawn so deeply into herself, now found solace in her art. And Ethan, ever the optimist, had found a sense of purpose in the restoration process, learning alongside Luke, whose steady presence had become an anchor for them all. Luke. Jessica felt her heart flutter at the thought of him. He'd been the catalyst for much of their progress, not only with his expertise, but with his unwavering support. Over the months, their friendship had deepened into something more. A quiet understanding. A bond forged in shared experience. He had been there when the storms rolled in, both literal and emotional, and had never once faltered. Now, standing by her side on the porch, he looked at her with a warmth that reached deep into her soul. "Hey," he said, his voice low and steady as he approached, a slight smile playing on his lips. Jessica turned to him, her heart swelling. "I was just thinking about how far we've come, how much we've been able to do. This house, it's not just the renovations. It's the life we've built here." Luke nodded, his gaze soft and thoughtful. "It's a special place. But I think you know by now that it's not just the house that's made it special. It's you. You've brought it back to life. You and your kids." Jessica felt a warmth spread through her chest, his words touching something deep inside her. "I didn't do it alone, Luke," she replied quietly. "None of this would have been possible without you. You were the one who showed me how to see the potential in this house, and in myself." He smiled, a quiet chuckle escaping him. "Maybe. But you were the one who had the courage to take the first step, to trust that something broken could still be made whole." The air around them was thick with unspoken understanding, with gratitude and something more. Something that Jessica couldn't quite name, but that fluttered in her chest every time their eyes met. It was a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. But now, standing in the light of the home they had all built together, it seemed impossible to ignore. The sound of footsteps approaching pulled her from her thoughts. Maya and Ethan were coming toward the porch, their faces bright with the same sense of pride Jessica felt in her heart. Ethan's eyes shone with excitement as he clutched a small wooden boat he had just finished sanding. "Look, Mom, I made this all by myself. Well, with a little help from Luke," he added with a grin. "That's amazing, Ethan," Jessica said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've come so far." Maya, too, held something in her hands. A small sketchbook, the pages filled with delicate drawings of the house, the garden, and the memories they had made here. "I've been thinking about the house a lot," Mia said softly, offering the sketchbook to Jessica. "This place, it's not just a house anymore. It's part of who we are. I wanted to show you how it's changed me." Jessica took the sketchbook, flipping through the pages. Each drawing captured a moment in time, a snapshot of the journey they had all been on. And as she turned the final page, her heart stopped. It was a drawing of their family, standing together on the front porch, the house behind them, bathed in the warm light of the setting sun. "I love it, Maya," Jessica whispered, her voice breaking. "You've captured us perfectly." As she looked up at Luke, she saw the same quiet emotion reflected in his eyes. Together, they had rebuilt more than just walls and floors. They had rebuilt their lives, their family, and their future. "This house," Jessica said softly, her voice thick with emotion, "has become our home in ways I never thought possible. And I couldn't have done it without all of you." Luke reached out, gently squeezing her hand. "You've always had everything you needed, Jessica. You just had to find it inside yourself." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across their lives, Jessica knew that this house, this home, had given them more than just shelter. It had given them a future, one built on love, hope, and the unwavering belief that even the most broken things could be made beautiful again. The night was thick, with the scent of freshly fallen rain, a quiet contrast to the lively hum of voices that filled the house. It was the night before the Winter Lights Festival, and the Carter family had finally come to a place where they could breathe easy. The house was no longer just a project to be fixed. It had become a true home, warm, inviting, and full of memories they had built together. Jessica stood by the window in the living room, gazing out at the darkened yard. The glow of the porch lights cast long shadows across the ground, and she could almost imagine the old oak tree standing proud, its gnarled branches reaching up to the sky as if welcoming the season's first frost. She felt a deep sense of peace settle over her, the kind of calm that had eluded her for so long. In her heart, she knew that this home, this life they were building, was more than she had ever dreamed of. Behind her, the soft murmur of conversation drifted in from the kitchen. Luke was talking to Ethan, showing him how to string lights on the tree in the front yard. Maya was quiet as always, but there was something different about her now, a quiet confidence that had blossomed over the past few months. The distance that had once stretched between them was narrowing, day by day, moment by moment. Jessica couldn't help but smile as she listened to her children laugh and work together. This, she realized, was what home felt like. The sound of footsteps drew Jessica's attention, and she turned to see Luke approaching, his eyes soft with affection. "You okay?" he asked gently, his voice low and reassuring. Jessica nodded, her smile deepening. "I'm more than okay," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've been thinking about how far we've come. It feels like we're finally getting somewhere. Luke's smile mirrored hers, but there was something more in his eyes. A depth that had grown between them in the quiet moments they shared, in the work they had done side by side. "We've come a long way," he agreed, his gaze softening. "But I think we've built something special here, something that wasn't just about fixing the house. It's about building a life, a family." Jessica felt her heart flutter in her chest, and for a brief moment, everything seemed to stand still. She looked at Luke, really looked at him, and in that moment, she knew this was the beginning of something she hadn't allowed herself to hope for, not even when she'd first arrived in this town. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he looked at her, that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, the life she had imagined was within reach. Luke seemed to sense the shift in the air, and he took a small step closer. "You've done more than just bring this house back to life, Jessica. You've brought yourself back to life too." His words struck her like a wave, unexpected and overwhelming. Jessica swallowed hard, the weight of everything she had been through crashing down on her. She had never truly believed she could come out of the wreckage, never imagined that she would find this kind of peace. Yet here it was, right in front of her, and it felt like the most precious gift she had ever received. "I don't know how I got here," Jessica whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I didn't know if I could do it. If I could fix everything, fix us." "You already did," Luke said quietly, his eyes unwavering. "One step at a time. One choice at a time." For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them. A silence filled with understanding, with the weight of all they had built together. Then, softly, as if a thought had just occurred to him, Luke spoke again. "Tomorrow's the Winter Lights Festival. You and the kids want to go with me? Like, as a family?" Jessica felt a warmth spread through her chest at the simple question. It wasn't just about the festival or the lights. It was about the invitation, the quiet promise of a shared future. "I'd love to," she said, her voice steady and sure. Luke smiled, his eyes lighting up. "Good." "Just like everything else we've done." Jessica nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deeply in her heart. Everything they had built, the house, their new life, their family, was perfect in its own way. Was perfect in its own way, not because it was flawless, but because it had been earned, fought for, and loved back to life. As they stepped outside, the crisp air filling their lungs, Jessica looked at the house one last time, its windows glowing with warmth and light. She knew there would always be more work to do, more renovations, more adjustments, but for the first time, it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt like a promise, a commitment to the future, to each other, and to the new family they were creating. And as she stood there, hand in hand with Luke, watching the lights twinkle in the distance, Jessica felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for the house, but for the love and support she had found in unexpected places. They had started with brokenness, with fear, but had built something far greater. Something that would last. Something beautiful. As Jessica and her family stood together, watching the lights twinkle at the Winter Lights Festival, they had come to realize that the true essence of home isn't defined by walls or roof beams. It's about the people you share it with and the love you pour into it. Through every challenge, setback, and moment of doubt, they found strength in each other and in the unwavering belief that, no matter how broken something may seem, it can always be rebuilt. This story teaches us that life, much like a house, is a work in progress. We all face moments of struggle, but it's the determination to move forward, the courage to start over, and the support we find in others that truly shapes who we are. No matter how daunting the journey may seem, it's the small steps, the love, and the kindness we offer that bring healing and transformation, not just to our homes, but to ourselves. The road to rebuilding might be long, but it is always worth the effort, and the result can be something more beautiful than we ever imagined. So, where are you watching from? How does this story resonate with you? And if you enjoyed this journey of resilience and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Let's keep building a community together.